Welcome again to the PlayCreate podcast. I'm Kirsten Gunrud.
And I'm Jill Johnson.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us again today. So today, I think we talked about focusing on time management and or energy management.
Yep.
And how we work with that.
Yeah, and timing. We were talking about how in improv, the beauty of when things all align is timing, which also works within those same arenas.
Yes, it does.
Is how we come into things and when the timing is right and when we need to back off, when we need to rest, when we need to incubate, whatever it might be. Time has such a different meaning for everyone. And we could also get super deep and talk about how time is just a construct, but that would probably take forever and take too much time. So we'll keep it on our idea of keeping it in those three circles that we keep talking about.
Yeah.
Of letting go, using everything, and noticing more.
Yeah.
So from that, yes.
Well, I was on that kind of deeper level. I'm going to touch that quickly, which is that what I have found oftentimes is as soon as I let go of not having enough time, I have enough time.
Yes.
It's weird. It's
Yep.
crazy. It makes no sense to me how that happens. But I just had that happen yesterday, actually. I had way too many things to get done in my day. And instead of worrying about that, I just kind of started playing into them and working on things and getting things done. And I was blown away by how much I was able to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think we have false deadlines. You know, we create all these imminent deadlines in our heads,
Yes.
you know, that things have to be done at a certain time. And it's just not the case. You know, most of the time, it's very rare that something really needs to be done in the moment.
Yeah.
It's always something that we can return to, or I like to say that it's kind of like I drop balls all the time, but luckily they're bouncy.
Yeah.
And they bounce back in my awareness right when I need them.
Yeah.
And I think also trusting that, you know, I do trust that now because I know that's my process. It's taken a while to be okay with that. But, you know, like my dad is an incredible person with lists. He has pages and he has spiral notebooks of lists. It could probably go through my whole life through all of his spiral notebooks, which are filed.
Yeah.
But that works for him. He knows that they're there and it will get done somehow, and he prioritizes each day and what needs to come up. But I do think we have this really big necessity on us, especially in our Western culture. I'm just speaking from our world about being very busy and not having enough time. So those two things are like, they kind of brush me the wrong way when people will say to me, "Oh, you just are so busy." And I'm like, well, no, yes, it's busy, but I'm never too busy for what's really important. It's like being with people I love and just stopping for a moment and having a conversation or whatever it might be.
It's interesting in your case that people say that, because I don't think I've ever heard you say, "I'm so busy."
I try not to.
Yeah.
But it's been conscious because
Yes.
I was catching myself saying, "I'm just so busy," or there's just too much on my plate, or I don't have enough time. And another thing that I've kind of been trying to be aware of is I just need to get through this.
Yeah.
Because I was saying that for a long time, where I was like, I just need to get through this, which was a lot to get through.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, well, I get to go do this. I get to go, you know, be with my friend in the morning and create something together. I get to go do this. I want my children to hear me say that I am making a choice.
Yes.
And, you know, most of the stuff is a choice. There's really, really stuff that I have to do.
And in doing that, you're shifting the energy of it.
Yeah.
So thinking about energy management, to a certain degree, time management, how we talk about things matters. And the amount of energy, when we think we're too busy or when we think we just need to get through this, we're oftentimes not even conscious of it. But the amount of energy we're putting into that, because it's so big and in some cases overwhelming, tends to eat up a lot of our resources and our energy.
Yep.
Whereas when we're choosing and we're finding a way to find the good in it and look forward to whatever those things are, things flow better. And all that extra energy that's being used kind of behind the scenes isn't getting spent. So you have it to be present in the moment. You have it to go to the next thing. You have it for those situations. And it's not, I mean, it sounds simple. It's just shift your language, shift your mind. It's not.
No.
That's actually a hard thing to do, even though it sounds incredibly simple. But it's a really powerful thing the more we can practice it and make it happen, or at least that's what I've experienced with it.
Well, and you can see that with language in everything. You know, right now when we look on Facebook or anywhere when we're going through gender identification, you know, there's a big movement of how we are using language. I remember like in undergrad, like coming across social construction theory and having it just blow my mind about the constructs that we make. And one of these things is how we look at time and how we go about our days and what we think needs to fit into them. And it's a hard thing to unlace because it's been habitually created throughout our lives. You know, we've watched everyone, we have school. I mean, school's a great example of this is how you do it. Yeah. And then you get out of school and you're just trying to unravel it, you know. For a lot of us, everything we learned, we're trying to unlearn to learn something more or to expand what we thought we knew. Yeah. So I think that's just part of it. But the thing with time and timing, the notice more to me is also showing up. Yeah. So the whole thing of like, it's going to be hard sometimes. It's not like all butterflies and fairies and wow, I can really see the positiveness. You know, yesterday I was in bed and not feeling great, and you know, there was a big circle in my mind because of course a lot of us have troubles just like taking it easy when and it's a Monday and you need to do stuff, you know. But a lot of it is just my own narrative in my mind going up. And a lot of it is just me just getting up and showing up to one thing at a time. Yeah. Just go get that email done, lay back down. Go do this, lay back down. You know, whatever it might be. Yeah. And sometimes we just don't have the luxury. We just have to like kind of soldier on and get through it in a way that we're checking it off. And then we can like revitalize where we are and get some time for us, you know. But yeah, timing is a sneaky one. But also like when things come in our awareness, that's timing. Yes. When suddenly a door opens and everything just lines up. Like I think a lot of times this happens with people who just lost their job or decide to leave their job. And then right when they're let go of that, something opens. Another way comes into being. Or you finally break up, like you finally get out of that really bad relationship. Yeah. Or not even a bad relationship. It was good, but it just wasn't it. Yeah. And, you know, you've been kind of like, well, I'm kind of in, it's kind of like, I call it being on like one foot on each side of the equator. Yeah. Like you're like, oh, maybe I'll stay, you know, because you don't want to just totally let go, because God forbid, like maybe that will work. Right. But it's when we really let go. Yes. And we dive in, that other things open up. So timing also requires us to be more open, to have to kind of cut some cords that are no longer serving us. Yeah. And that's a scary place, because a lot of times I always say it's kind of, you get comfortable in discomfort. Yes. So if something isn't working right, like let's say you're in a relationship that isn't great, but you're really comfortable in the chaos or what's not working, because the idea of jumping into something, well, first of all, untying all the threads that you've made together in your weft and weave. Overwhelming. And then, you know, really leaping. And then there's all these narratives we play. So I think all that stuff comes with how we look at time. I also like to talk about like how much time we spend in our minds instead of like right here, because I mean, I am first to say I love to dwell in my mind, and I'm getting better and better at it, but it is definitely a
You're
work
getting
in
better
progress.
at dwelling in your mind?
At getting out of my mind and not dwelling so much in it.
Right.
But it's a hard thing because it's such a quick thing. Matt, my husband, will call it my spiral, and and it's really like a tornado. And when I was younger, this would happen a lot, where one thing would get in my mind, and then it would just start to sweep. Like all of a sudden, everything was connected.
Yeah.
Everything around it was connected. Like, oh, I stubbed my toe. Oh my God, that means that this. Oh, da da da. It just all started to cyclone into one thing. So really being like, oh, that's just that. I'm not adding more to that.
Yeah.
So the way I'm getting out of my mind is like literally like, okay, well, Jilly, you're way in your mind.
Yeah.
Like, get back in here. Get back in this moment. Move around. Something,
What's your cue? How do you know when you're getting into your mind?
I will just start adding and adding. It's like I am in this really great math problem, and instead of subtracting, I just keep adding and adding and adding, and somehow they're all looped together.
Yeah.
Some way, somehow I can connect everything that's happened into one really beautifully connected narrative that is just all bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just all a non-real thing. And so I have to
come
say,
up with a way. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm probably
no.
about to
And
say this.
so my thing is, I'm like, okay, I have to get up, whatever I'm doing, and I just have to start walking around. I have to just write. You and I are very much writers, so I'll go back to intention.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just kind of come back to a moment. I'll grab one of my little mala bracelets and just start breathing with each bead,
mm-hmm.
maybe a mantra.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll just get outside for like a moment.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a lot, but I notice if I just change my scenery, just change my place, just change my position, it's helpful.
Yeah.
Because, it's too easy. It's way too easy for me to get lost in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think almost every person, I think, struggles with that. I'm sure there's some who don't, but I think that's something that, especially, we know, not that this is necessarily anxiety, but as our world gets crazier and crazier, mm-hmm. as busier and busier becomes a bigger and bigger badge to wear, as more and more is coming at us and we feel like we need to do more and more and more, we know that people's anxieties levels are rising to all-time highs. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of things going on, right? Which all, I think, tends to come from a similar place.
Yep.
So I think a lot of people are challenged by that right now, whether it's technically anxiety or just overthinking or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and even like I was driving one of my friend's kids to school this morning and just watching the phone, the digital world, and how much time is spent waiting for the text to come through after we send it, yes. The reply or the comment or whatever might thread through. There's so much time spent, which we can't just throw that away because it's part of our cultural language now, and it's also where our kids are dwelling. That's how they're making friends, that's how they're communicating, that's how they go back and forth, instead of like waiting by the telephone like we did to really date us, like circling the spiral thing around our
and
finger,
fighting over it with our brothers.
And gosh, when call waiting came, that was just incredible. But all that stuff, we were doing time. That was where we were doing it, and now it's in a different way. So I think the big thing that we're really curious about is how we play with time.
Yeah.
And how we use it to fuel us instead of feeling like a burden.
Yeah.
Because when we're saying like, I'm so busy, or it's just, this is a busy week, I can feel it. I feel it in every morsel of my being. But knowing that, how am I carving just little moments so I don't just get flooded?
Yeah.
And I get to see my kids in between the chaos, and I get to slow down for a second. sometimes it isn't possible,
Yeah.
but I am consciously aware of it and trying to make it.
And I think, I hadn't thought about this until talking now on the level that's starting to come to me. I think if we stop thinking of it as time management and do start thinking about it more as energy management, and time is one of the components of it, because so much of that energy, again, is the stuff behind it. It's anticipating a busy, crazy week. It's anticipating what's going to happen in that next moment. It's anticipating, and you're good about calling me on expectation all the time, right? Like what our expectations are of what's going to happen, versus entering that busy week, that chaotic week, in the moment. Because the more we can do that, again, I'm not saying this is necessarily the easiest thing, but the more we can be conscious of it, the more we can be in the moment, instead of spending all this energy we don't even realize we're spending on the anticipation and the expectation and what am I going to do and how am I going to, and all that stuff that we wrap ourselves up in, that actually causes us to spend more energy than we need to, when we could be focusing that energy and could be focusing those resources on just being exactly where we are in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think the whole idea that time's a commodity, so we're so focused on money, the monetary gain of the commodities, but time is a really big one.
Yeah.
And, I remember, I think I was in high school when I took off my watch in Moab and left it on the back of the toilet because I was like, oh, time is like totally constructed and I need to let it go. So I haven't worn really a watch, and I did for a heartbeat because the Apple Watch was so much fun, but I just started to notice how crazed I was about it and I lost it. So let's just be honest. But the thing about the commodity is that I was really big about flow. Like, well, I need to flow into things and how it shows up. But Matt, for example, is all about scheduling. Yeah. And for me, it's been art to finally find, like, oh, if I'm scheduling, I'm actually locking down a space that I can show up and flow into. Yes. So when I show up to something, I'm fully there. I'm fully in the present moment. Yeah. And I don't overthink it because I know it's on my calendar. It's ready. Like, we come here knowing that the space is here and that we're going into it. Yes. Whereas before, I just wouldn't do that. So knowing that it's a commodity, I want to know where my time sits. So I want to block out time. Yeah. I want to know, okay, I have to be here on this date, so then everything else can filter around it. Exactly. So that I'm not just haphazard and feeling busy because I'm trying to run around and do too much. Yeah. I am a huge believer, as you know, that different tools work for different people. The tool that has been most powerful for me in the last couple of years has been time blocking. Yeah. And it's for that reason. And I was the same way. And even at the beginning of using time blocking, I struggled because I wanted to be open to whatever showed up, whenever it showed up, and be able to. But what I found was I was just getting pulled in 10 million directions, instead of setting some intention on how I wanted to use that energy and those resources. And time blocking, I still leave blocked time open to whatever wants to show up, but blocking those chunks of time around what I know I want to be creating and who I want to be creating with, whether it's personal stuff, business, whatever it might be, has been such an incredibly powerful tool. Yeah, I agree, especially if you're a creative. So there's something, when people ask, like, is there anything you missed before having kids? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, what was I doing with all my time? Yes. What did I do? I want to go back to that girl and be like, what are you doing? Yes. And so what I miss are the time on end. So like that, I could just wake up and I could just go into the creative process and not have, okay, I have to drop off at school. Okay, I have this many hours, go. Yeah. And it took a while to get used to that because part of my process was just like letting it come. Yes. And now it's like, nope, this is a ritual now. Like, you got to do it now. There isn't another time. Yeah. Yeah, there might be time in the future, but you got to use what you have right now. Yeah. Which I think is really hard for a lot of creatives. Yeah. We all have these processes. We all have these rituals. We love to talk about how we come into it. But sometimes you only have an hour. Yeah. And how are you going to use that hour? And maybe something great comes out of it, but maybe nothing comes out of it except that you were in it. You were in the process.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of things about time and timing is getting in it.
Yes.
Getting in the process, because you're using your time. You're not just thinking about when it will be better.
Yeah.
When it can always, more time can always bring more results.
Yeah.
But we don't always have that.
Well, and I think we get caught up again in this idea that we need more time. And I had talked last time a little bit about an exercise that we do in Flight Camp where we have 2 minutes to brainstorm. 2 minutes.
Yes, yep.
A friend of mine a long time ago came up with what he called, I think the hive or something about bees. Mm-hmm. And it was this where people on a team could ring a bell and everyone would come together, and it had to be limited to 5 or 10 minutes. But the whole idea of it was you've got 5 minutes to buzz around this thing together, and then you have to leave it. And once we set that time as a constraint, can actually be an incredibly powerful thing. Mm-hmm. And once we allow ourselves to focus in on that 5 minutes that we have and see what comes up and play with it, instead of think we need an hour or 2 hours, I'm always blown away by how much we can accomplish in 5 minutes.
Yes. And I mean, there's procrastinators everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's like, I am such a procrastinator.
Yes.
And I've gotten better at it, you know.
Yes.
But that's another thing is like when we're procrastinators, there's a part of us that just wants to, we feel that, I'll get it, you know, I'll get it in this last moment. Yeah. And so kind of coming into, that might happen, but also you can create these little time blocks as well. You can create those little moments of pressure to help incubate ideas faster, so that you're not just taking something. To me, what I was noticing about my procrastination is that I was just skimming the milk off the top, but I wasn't getting I wasn't getting into the depths, you know. So there's something about getting with it, and you know, it's also years and maturity.
Yes.
Which
you learn.
Yeah.
So my invitation, in the interest of time, for people over this next week, is to notice the energy that they're putting behind how they're thinking about time, their time management, whatever it might be. So what I've come to notice in my old years is there's a feeling that goes with it, and where I'm spending that energy. And even if I think I'm going and I'm showing up there, sometimes there's all this other energy that I'm expending, again, thinking about it, worrying about it, anticipating, whatever it might be. And just being aware of the feelings that are coming up in your body as you're working with time, and noticing that.
Yep.
And then we can talk maybe next week about what to do with that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is noticing that when you start to set little rituals around time, you know, yesterday, like for example, I was in bed, so I was worried. I was like, oh gosh, am I going to feel good tomorrow? Yeah. I don't want, you know, to wake up and have Kirsten waiting. So I was like, just so you know, I'm in this space. But then in the same regard, I was like, well, wait, we've kind of blocked out this time, so I want to honor it when we can do it. So even if I show up sick, it will be just fine, you know? But I think being aware of all the little things when you're also worried about where you're going to spend time.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's great stuff, notice what starts to whirl around when you don't feel good or when you're starting to feel stressed.
Yeah.
When you feel stress in your body, time really takes on a whole nother thing. I mean, this is such a great example. And I think also being aware of when things are timelessness, like notice when you forget time.
Yes.
Because that's where you need to be.
Yes.
Like what's feeding that moment when everything else drops away? And then how can you bring that more into your life?
Yes.
How can you feature that so that you can experience that more, where it really does get more fluid and you're not staring at the clock, you know, taking a test, you're staring at the clock, trying to stay it. But when you, like for us, when we're in creative flow, when I'm on my skis,
yeah,
there's no time. I'm just there.
Yeah.
And so notice when you're so wickedly in the present moment that everything else drops away and you're no longer worried about the busy, the schedule, all of that. And just take note.
Yes. I love that. So that's our invitation for this week. And next week we'll continue playing with this a little bit.
Yeah, I think what would be interesting is kind of when all these pieces come together. So we were talking about where all the 3 circles of notice more, let go, and use everything. That sweet spot, where has that shown up?
Yeah.
And I'd like to start inviting maybe some people in that have used when that sweet spot is really evident in their work.
I'm so excited. Rob Poynton, who wrote the book that is the launch pad that we use at Rocket Trike and that we've been talking about, which is called Do You Improvise? And he's written a couple others. He just released one called Do Pause. And he had another book called Everything's an Offer that was kind of the pre-book to Do Improvise. But he wants to come talk with us.
Yay.
Which I'm so
When
excited
do we get
about.
him?
I adore him. Sometime in November.
Great.
I think is what's going to happen.
Perfect.
Yes.
Awesome.
So, and then I know we both have tons of people we can't wait to bring in and share and explore with.
Yeah,
so.
that's exciting. Yeah, so good luck with your time.
Likewise.
Use your time wisely.
See, just there. Okay,
And play with your time.
Play with your time.
Yeah.
Yes. Enjoy your time.
Oh, playtime.
Embrace playtime.
There we go.
Make sure you have lots of playtime in your week.
Yes.
Block some time for playtime.
And we'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.